Lead with email, influencing change in your organization. We have 3 great speakers, and I'm going to help moderate this panel. So first up, we have So we have Anna Lisco from Klick. So Anna is passionate about people, leadership, development, and focused on building out expertise in marketing technologies, particularly in the email space. She leads the campaign and optimization email team at Klick, a leading health and pharmaceutical marketing agency here in Toronto. And they've won several awards over the last year. So Anna's going to come up and join us here. Next, we have Taina Suomela from Inbox Marketer. Taina is the general manager of Inbox Marketer's Toronto Hub. Taina helps clients drive business growth through integrated, data-driven digital marketing strategies. As a chartered marketer with over 18 years marketing experience, Taina is passionate about creating audience-focused marketing strategies that connect above-the-line advertising with below-the-line CRM for effective messaging from acquisition to loyalty, retention. Wow, that's a great bio. A lot of words. And last up, we have Phillip from G Adventures. So Phillip is the global marketing automation and CRM manager. So Phillip's in Australia. We moved to Toronto in 2004. You'll catch that when he talks. He's found it more difficult to leave than he thought. So yay, Canada, we kept him. At travel company G Adventures, he's found his niche in the global marketing automation team, responsible for getting the right piece of content to the right person at the right time. Self-confessed marketing technology nerd, his passion is making data actionable across systems. And I've seen Phillip present on how he did his automation process for G Adventures. If you were part of the Email Geeks meetup where he did that, it was fantastic. So he's got a ton of information. Pick his brain. So welcome to the panel. So we're going to start with just a very quick sort of, maybe like an introductory, how they sort of fell into this topic and why this is important for them within each of their organizations and sort of the motivator for pushing and making change within their organizations. It's a common tactic or common conversation I hear, like, I'm stuck, I can't get IT to work with me, I'm stuck. Marketing's always giving me really short deadlines and I need to get something coded. I'm sure you've all been there, right? How do you hold people accountable? How do you make those changes for your organization and really build that into the workflow? It's really important for email because I'm sure we've all had that, oops, I sent the wrong thing, the wrong coupon code, I had to send an apology email, and really trying to minimize those types of things. Do you want to start? Which end would you like? Sure. Anna, you're up first.
Hi, everyone. So the change, or the biggest change I probably influenced when I started at Klick 3 years ago, and I walked in, I actually came from a big bank here in Toronto, and to a digital marketing agency that was growing and growing exponentially. And our marketing automation, our CRM teams, were actually disparate and decentralized, supporting different clients. And so one of the things that I had the pleasure of observing was all these really talented and smart specialists working independently, trying to figure out these solutions for our clients and getting stuck along the way. And so one of the things that was apparent to me was building out more of a shared service model, a centralized model, and that's actually something we've realized today in the last nine months to a year, and it's growing. We're maturing, sometimes faster, sometimes slower, depends on the item and the topic, but we're moving in the direction that we want to see happen. So that's what we're doing.
I think, like many people, I sort of fell into email a bit. From it being a portion of a job that I was doing, and I found that was actually the bit that I enjoyed. So it went from being 10% of my job to sort of faking my way into the job, fake it till you make it sort of thing. And then from there, I really found a passion around uniting those different data sources and finding those opportunities to drive the business forward. Because as email marketers, you are in a unique position. You see a lot more data than traditional marketers would, certainly the above the line side. I mean, they kill for some of the metrics that we see day to day. So there's a real opportunity there to see things and to really, using your business acumen, find out opportunities where you can drive the business forward, because the people who are in other departments that you can help don't actually know the information you have and the changes you can make. A recent example of that from G Ventures is that we do have a substantial tours business as well. We lead small group adventure tours, but we also sell flights. But I was wondering whether that one.
We're not picking up in the back.
No? Is this better?
Yes.
Yes. More?
Yeah.
Testing. Yeah. So we found that although we have a high degree of awareness around our land tours, and that's what people are coming to us for, we're actually missing out on a lot of opportunity with the flight side, because people don't necessarily know that we sell it. So the air team, as we call them internally, are always looking to grow that revenue, but they didn't know, for example, that we can segment people who just booked their land product, their tour in the last week or so, and then we can send them an email saying, why don't you book your air with us as well, your flights? We know who's actually booked those flights with us yet or not, so we have the information to make sure that goes to the right person. We put that in, and immediately within, I think, a month, we had something like 100 additional people who booked flights there. So the team that actually is gaining the most from that, the flights team, they're not going to come to us and say, why don't you build out an automated piece that sends a flights email to people who've just booked? But you have to connect the dots for them. And I think in the email marketing or marketing automation teams, you have a really good opportunity to do that, to find those opportunities, and you'll get there by knowing more and more around the business and helping more and more people. So I think that's really how you can drive change.
Should we use that one?
Yes. Yeah, we'll put that on.
Hello?
No, okay.
Okay. Hello? Hear me? Yes? Higher? Good? All right. Rock star stuff? Okay. So my role at Inbox is actually really around creating change in the organization. So I've only been in the email space for about 2.5 years. My background is actually in digital acquisition media. So I'm the media person that sits at Inbox. But the reason that I decided to join the organization, why I was brought in, was exactly what you were talking about in being able to bridge the gap between email and other digital channels. So, it always amazes me that it's such a completely different world. The companies are different, the people are different. I literally jumped over the fence and it was like a whole new group of friends I was like hadn't met before. But I'm constantly impressed with the skill and the ability and technology, data, audiences. I mean, there's some really cool stuff that's happening in email, and the rest of the digital space doesn't really know about it. So I think for me, what makes this really interesting is the ability of email marketers to create change in their organization by being the leader. So it's not it's not that channel in the back corner in the other room in the CRM team. I mean, all the really interesting audience marketing work is stemming from email work. And as Phil was saying, using that to your advantage, bringing that forward to your other business teams, to your other leadership, talking about ways to broaden that into those conversations and other channels is really important within a broader digital strategy. So to me, that's sort of my my mission is to look at ways to bridge the gap and bring those people together to do some really good marketing collectively. And there's the organizations that are doing that are still a little bit few and far between. They're still acting in silos. So I try to do that at Inbox to try and bring more of that perspective into the work we do with our clients and help our clients figure out how to do that within their organizations.
All right, good. Keep the mic because this one's coming. So, Taina and I used to work together as well, so we've had lots and lots of conversations around data and how data gets used. And one of the things that we used to talk about really was, email might be the center of your universe, but there's all kinds of other analytics that you can use to see more of a multi-channel or more holistic, call it omni-channel, if the buzzwords, are your thing as opposed to all channel. Where do you see influencing change to break down those silos, if you will, and sort of work in a more holistic view?
Yeah, I think for us, I always talk about strategy before structure. So oftentimes we have clients that will come to us and say, well, we've invested in this technology platform. What do I do with it? And I think for those conversations have to happen a lot earlier. So you start to figure out, and a lot of it can stem from the email side. I mean, you're closest to the data, you're closest to the audience. You do a lot of, test and learn, a lot of creative testing. But looking at that and saying, well, if I focus on my customer, not my channel, what experience or what behavior am I trying to influence in this particular customer and, or the set of customers? And then start thinking about other touches within the organization around that customer. And if you don't have the data or the information to enable that kind of a strategy, and then you start figuring out where you want to go. Well, okay, there's a whole spectrum of personalization that we talk about, and sort of that batch and blast on this end to omni-channel on the other end. That doesn't happen overnight, and especially in large organizations, it can be a very long path. But you're not going to get there unless you get your executive buy-in and get the influence from senior leadership. And the way that you get their buy-in is with data and with strategy. So if you can prove and do some testing and show both internally in an organization, look at your competitors and say, well, this is why this is important. We've done some testing and look at the result. Get their buy-in to say as an organization, it's a priority for them to be more personalized and work towards an omni-channel model. And then you start building sort of a roadmap in between. But it's and it can be a tough path, right? I mean, everybody has large organizations have a lot of trouble trying to figure out how to move. The teams are in silos. People are looking at business lines, all kinds of complexity. And, the day-to-day is not quiet for people to stop and think about it. So we have a lot of tools that we use with our clients around helping them build roadmaps and figuring out how to get there and getting the stakeholder engagement and getting their input into the process. And I think that's really the critical place to start. And then once you get that, then it's a little bit more tactile, putting the pieces in motion.
Great, and I guess Phil, being the client side individual here, as opposed to the agency side, and sort of having had that conversation about how you do some of that. When you're looking at building those types of programs internally and working with other teams, how do you manage that type of communication and work within those silos, or work to break down those silos?
I think you need to look at all the different pieces of how a customer can interact with you. And when you look at those pieces, you'll start to notice things that could be very influential in your marketing if you were able to take advantage of it. An easy example, again, with a high involvement purchase, and I'll probably keep coming back to travel, is that once you've booked a vacation, you likely won't book the same vacation with the same company until you've traveled and come back. So at that stage, you can start to take certain actions, like not send them the 50% off deal for the trip they just booked yesterday. Whether that's through email or also pushing that as a custom audience to Facebook to make sure that, again, they're not going into any of those buckets to see deals. And then you can get to more complicated things. Like if you push that data around purchases to Google, then you can stop actually serving up ads to people who've paid for that same trip as well. So when they're going back to that page to check the packing list or to check the exact itinerary, you're not paying another $2, $3, $4 every time they go back to the page. So some of those are easy and some of those are hard, but I think when you actually do a full mapping out of here's how a customer could interact with me, you'll start to see some that are quick wins and some that you might need to work with your technology or IT team for months or even years. And then once you do that, you'll be able to slowly cross those pieces off the list and start to get a more comprehensive view of that customer. It's probably impossible to 100% get there, but by continually striving to get all those different touch points in, you'll start to go a long way towards beating your competitors, because it's a difficult thing to do. There's a lot of trying back and forth. Can we get that data? How can we not get that data? Why can't it come in here? Why isn't it over there? And getting the right structure. The rewards are immense if you get it right.
So I picked up on the comment you were making around don't send the deal or don't send even potentially other deals to those consumers. So is that when you took that internally as an idea to say, instead of including these people in our internal emails every week, everyone gets the same sort of discounts or different kind of through the channels, what was that conversation like? To be like, we need to just stop sending them those emails and put them in like that different stream. Like, how did that happen?
Yeah. I'll probably caveat this by saying it's probably easier in my industry than it would be in retail, because if you have to drive a weekly, monthly result through email in retail, then it's much harder to say we're going to segment out these people, because the people that you segment out aren't necessarily going to add to the revenue to that particular email send. So if your boss is breathing down your neck for a particular result, that's a harder conversation to have. But I mean, we slowly progressed from sending those sort of communications to everyone to fewer and fewer people, only the qualified people, by basically doing A/B tests. And we know from our lead scoring and all the different models we've got internally built up over time that people who haven't shown particular activities are very unlikely to book. We've got maybe 2% of our database at any time that's in market for travel, and the other 98% mostly don't have the budget, or they don't have vacation, or whatever it might be. So sure, they're looking for travel inspiration, but if you keep sending them deals, they're going to lose interest. And we A/B tested against that not engaged group when we had big sales on, and we found that it didn't actually make a difference whether we sent to it or not. It actually drove the same revenue number. So it's obviously fantastic if you can back it up with data. If you can't back it up with data, then I guess you have to try more around the customer experience play, and that is easier in some industries than others, I realise. But you can get there bit by bit, just chip away at it. You can change people's minds over time. Good chat.
And I'll just talk really loud.
It's a problem.
It feels like a problem at this point. There's a little bit of volume there, so we've talked about this as well, just in preparation for the event, and influencing change can be challenging internally in an organization. And you touched on a couple things earlier, but do you have like a good solid example of a time that you worked internally to change and really sort of push your marketing efforts forward as an organization, or even internal process forward?
Yeah, for sure. So many different examples, and I think you touched upon how change can be really difficult. And it really depends on timing. It really depends on the size of your organization, perhaps the number of teams you have to interact with. A smaller company that has a few people and they're all banding together, can get things out the door a lot quicker than, Klick, when I first started, was 500 people, is now 800 plus people. It's becoming harder and harder, to influence up the chain and sideways as well. And so, for things that are quick wins or easy to implement, I would say just do them. One of the examples is, some of our standardization and scalable processes that we want to put in place around email best practices, things like deployment checklists, or just the handoffs between QA and the developers, or whatever that process is getting clearer on that and making it easier for regular daily work to flow more naturally, as opposed to getting stuck along the way. If we're waiting for a project manager to move the work, as opposed to the individual driving the opportunity, it makes it a lot harder and slower. Whereas if you have a big change, like, I don't know, you're changing your marketing automation platform, it's kind of a big thing. It's not easy to do. There's not only the fact that you have to buy a new product, but you also have to evaluate what you're going to do with your existing product and your programs. And Klick went through that undertaking in the summertime, and one of the ways we approached it was, what's the impact of not changing? If we stay as is today, is there going to be a big, a new platform is expensive, and again, the cost of migrating also adds up to the price tag, and but if we stay with the current platform, do we lose out on opportunities? And taking that approach actually allowed us to realize the timing wasn't right. We're not ready to change yet. It's not that 6 months, another year. That may happen, and likely is going to happen, or we become more agnostic, things like that. But taking more of a risk-based approach might be helpful to influence up the chain.
Great. I really don't think this is that.
I can hand it back to you.
I have a big voice. I'll just talk loud enough, I think, that everyone can hear. So, everyone has multiple stakeholders to answer to, especially in the marketing team, right? You've got PR on one hand, you've got your CMO on another, your analytics team wants data. How do you interact with those groups? And I'll ask anyone who wants to answer first. Answering those questions, because you're probably getting the same answer, same question from multiple groups. How do you make that more efficient?
Yeah, I can take that one. That's really a lot of the work that I do at Inbox is exactly that, figuring out how to transform our clients' email programs when they are incredibly complex. So we've got a ton of retail clients, there's lots of business units, everybody wants everything in every email all the time, every day, every offer, and the email teams have a challenge in staying focused on the experience that they're delivering to their subscribers and their customers, but also balancing all the needs within an organization. So there's a number of things that we do. Again, a lot of it comes back to executive buy-in on understanding the purpose and the role of email. So a lot of retailers, it's all, they're offer driven. So it's like, oh, sales were down yesterday, put out an email, something in the store tomorrow. So figuring out ways to kind of combat that, where you have the flexibility to adapt your program and include a critical message or something that's time sensitive when you need to. A lot of that comes around things like modular templates and getting things that are set up with flexibility for the email teams, but with some control. So it's not the sort of the Wild West of everybody gets everything all the time. You can reprioritize certain offers or product placements and within an existing communication, as opposed to sending out 3 emails because 3 groups want to send emails each. So some of that is helping support them and organizationally to understand why that has value. And then looking at a larger roadmap around how to influence that change. So we do a scorecard approach that is really just an information gathering type of exercise, where we survey, it's a long survey, but a lot of key stakeholders to understand where they're at on their capabilities and where there are areas of weakness and opportunity. And usually that data can be really helpful when people are like, wow, we have to do this, we have to do that. And we're like, well, look, you have some challenges in your foundation. You need to do these things first. And that helps those conversations so that they can get to a place where they're building effective email. They'll look around, what an audience needs, moving more to journeys and triggers, but getting that buy-in in the organization that this is what the channel is for. It's not a push medium for offers, and showing them the data on what that does to engagement and inactives and all these things that are not at the end of the day driving the business results that they're actually asking for. So it's not easy, and we talk about it a lot, but we have had great success with some of our clients where we're able to shift that mentality within the organization to build a better, more engaged email program over time.
Great.
I think I can add on.
Yeah, please do.
Traffic change management at the same time. I think that a lot of, certainly from the world where I'm in at the moment, that you've got a lot of brand managers, a lot of stakeholders, all the individual products, which is probably similar to the agency-client relationship as well. And in many cases, they might feel like nothing is happening if they're not putting in briefs or if they're not actually seeing emails or something go out. But the transition we're working through, my work at the moment is going from these campaign-based sends to more of an always-on approach. And that's a bit of a shift in thinking, because people won't necessarily see a new piece of creative every couple of weeks, every month, or even 6 months. But a lot of it's education around what's actually happening at the moment. So to say to somebody, all right, well, we're not actually going to put a different offer out this month for you, but at the moment we have these automated funnels which are gathering new leads on Facebook, gathering new leads through display, pushing relevant messages through email that people sign up. That education piece is key, because otherwise people are going to think that their needs aren't being met, and they're going to think that they want more email to be sent out, just all the lines, what you were saying before, Taina. So I think a lot of that stakeholder management and so on is finding alternatives to just sending out that, here, we've got a deal, because at the end of the day, if you send out an email that's used once with a point-in-time offer, then once you put that work in, that effort is done. If you could have something which is a lot more automated and actually is a bit more of an evergreen content, then you're going to get results from that email or from that piece of automation forever, or until you refresh the creative, and that is going to be so much more powerful for the business over the long term, rather than very short-sighted sales goals emails. So it's not always the easiest conversation to have again, but realistically that's the way we should be thinking as email marketers and marketing automation specialists, because that's going to be much more effective for your company in the long term.
An easy tool is ask questions. Every stakeholder has different agendas. You may not know what your CEO or your lead person is looking for, and if you find out more information, you actually might be able to figure out a way to communicate to them in a way that they can understand and bridge that gap. And that's something that as our company has been growing, there's many different teams and really smart people. And so if we find out what motivates, an analytics person, for example, email is one channel of many that they're probably reporting on, and so they may not have the same effort or energy that you have, that you're specialized in and working in this day in and day out. We've had some scenarios related to DNS configuration and just educating people on the client side and our client services teams, just like, why that's important. In fact, I want a copy of that diagram you had up there, like what happens after you get sent. Because it's I call it auto magic, but it kind of, there's a secret science that's happening behind the scenes. It's not quite as simple as it used to be. And so being able to articulate that, but in a way that other people can understand.
Great, thank you. So, when we were preparing for this, one of the things we talked about is not every plan succeeds, right? Sometimes you try things and they fail. How do you adapt once you've tried something and it's failed? How do you then sort of move forward from that and sort of regroup? Because sometimes, people get shy if they try and fail, right? And then they don't want to try again, or they're not as successful, or they're worried about not being successful again. So, is there an example maybe of something you've tried and it failed miserably and then you had to try again? Like, I know we always say always be testing, but not every test is a successful test.
Again, I'm not myself in the weeds in a lot of the email deployment we do. The one thing I wanted to add to answer that is it's a philosophy that somebody I met, and I think she worked at BMO, but she was talking about how they have a culture of failing fast, and how they and they actually call it flossom, is what they called it. So when somebody actually fails tried something and it failed, the boss is like, flossom! And I just thought that was so great, because truly you do have to test and you have to fail. I mean, there is no magic bullet. I mean, number of times people come to us as an agency and they're like, so what should I do with my email? I don't know, what's your email? Let's figure it out. Like, there's no magic key, there's no secret box where we open it up and here's a button you push. Like, that's not how it works, right? So, you have to have some tolerance for testing and failure within your organization. So, and I think that comes from, again, from the senior leadership, coming from empowering your people to think, to try new things, and they will fail, and having that be okay. Like, if people are afraid of failure, you're gonna get really safe, boring choices, and you're not going to evolve and grow. So I think, as anybody who either, regardless of what level that you're at, have those conversations in your organization and say, well, what's our tolerance for testing? What's our tolerance for trying something new? I have this idea, can we pilot it here? Can we do that? If as an organization, if you don't allow that to happen, you're never going to grow, you're never going to learn, and you're going to lose to your competitors who are doing it better.
So one of the things that we've talked about this at great lengths, and partly why we become friends, is one of the fail points that we had is we got blocked our IP and domain. Oh yeah, no, faux pas. You heard that? I know. So many slides. This is a while ago, and I say it. Why am I saying it? Because it is a faux pas, but it happens. Oh my God, it happens. And there's lots of people to manage, including the clients and the internal teams, and it's a long and tedious process. And what happened in that scenario was, genuinely, I've learned this space in a short period of time, and so I learned a lot more because of it. So you tend to, the failures may result in actually more learning if you take that approach. But it also forced me a little bit to go outside my internal network and go outside and seek the help of experts in sort of the Email Geeks channel and the meetup groups. And I encourage people to do that, because what it helped me do was, as I was learning this space, it actually helped me, one, ask questions and learn more, but also validate some of the thinking I had, and that I actually wasn't totally off the mark. But it's hard to feel confident if you don't have a bit of that subject matter expertise to support you. So it's a journey, but it can be uncomfortable and difficult and frustrating, but trying to kind of always see that opportunity as a way to move forward.
Yeah, I'm definitely a believer, as I'm sure everyone on this panel is out, that you need to be making mistakes, and if you're not making mistakes, then you probably need to be pushing the envelope a little bit more, because that's actually how you learn most and how you start to get ahead of your own head. As you try something, maybe it doesn't work, you pivot, you go in a new direction. So yeah, take care of those comments.
Yeah.
I've always liked the phrase, never have a plan B, just always plan to succeed, but we all know that doesn't work. It also reminds me of a conversation I had with another marketing strategist who who says, throw all best practices to the wind because somebody wrote them and all they're doing is holding you back. And my response always to that is, as a service provider, the reason we build best practices is because I watch all of my clients try it and fail. So if I know that 6 clients tried the exact same thing and they failed, I can prevent a lot of heartache and pain for somebody else by saying, just don't do that anymore. So, there is some thought process to learning from other people's failures as well. And I think that's where the communities that Anna has talked about, our local meetups that we have, Email Geek Slack channel, just other communities, even in LinkedIn, listening to others, having those conversations. I think that really helps you learn. And not every tactic's the right tactic. How many times have you heard, what day of the week's the best day to send email? Any day you want, really. People read email every day. So, any day you want, any day that ends in Y. We have a couple more pre-canned questions, but if there's anything from the audience, I'm happy to save those, or we can continue to move forward. If anyone has questions, concerns, yes, go ahead.
Nice.
Means we're gonna have to show.
I think it's a bit more of a comment, but it's about how we define failure as well. So if you look at scientific method of testing, you have to define a hypothesis, and it is null or the alternative. But that's in a nutshell failure. But you're just proving it against something that you've defined, and you have to test it in order to prove whether it was true to the hypothesis or if it failed. So it's not really failure; it's an outcome. Yeah, and you also have to consider how we test and whether that is a true failure, because the number of marketers that test once on a Tuesday 6 months ago and it wasn't done in a data science scientific method, you're perhaps taking an assumption on an outcome that was a false positive anyways, and carrying forward the wrong strategy, so that we hate to hear this continuous optimization, always be testing, but the failure can often be actually the right strategy, so we have to make sure that we are testing right and that we continue to do that and then carry that through again, right? So too many marketers just jumping to a conclusion, it didn't work and it was a lot of effort, so why would we do it again when we tested it before? And I think it's about that mentality shift and how we look at testing.
I want to talk to this guy. Yeah.
I think that's a really important point, and I think just generally, at least in my experience, both looking for candidates and as an email marketer initially myself, I think there's actually a bit of a lack of statistical nous amongst the email marketing community. You're asking email marketers to do a lot when you're talking about deliverability and email design and development and strategy, and to throw on top of that the data analytics bit, it's definitely not what it's traditionally in a marketer's skill set. There's a lot of this it's university, college level statistics. So whether you have that in your own skill set or whether you have somebody in your team who knows how to perform a correct statistical test and so on, it's really, really important to have that, because otherwise, like you said, you could be making those changes and it's actually something that is a one-off test, it's variance, it's because it's snowing outside, there's a whole bunch of mistakes you can go down the path of. And yes, we're not curing cancer, but you want to make the right decision. You want to be pretty confident that the change you're making for the long term is the right one.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. So when we work with our clients on testing plans, we're always testing something. We don't consider testing plan like, hey, test a subject line and that was a test. It is. But what we usually do is we build a 12-month plan, and I have a beautiful chart I wish I had here to show. But basically showing the impact of multivariate testing over a period of time. And when you kind of look at the chart, there's a little bit of up and down, up and down, and up and down until about 6 months or so. And then you start to see a really significant climb. They start layering on sort of all those things that have been learned from those tests. And over a 12-month period, there was a huge amount of growth in the program. But if you just based it on one test and moved on and didn't try that again, or didn't have a methodology over time to test it, again, you're going to be making decisions based on potentially false data. So we always encourage a much larger strategy on testing, not just, oh, I tested that, I learned this, and I've moved on.
Great. I saw another hand back here somewhere. Sorry.
He's not allowed to ask questions.
Yes. Phil, I have a question for you. Always on approach.
and how you plan to develop them, because that is very difficult times to go from campaign-based approach to a more always on. So two answers that I'm looking for is from a strategic perspective, how did you start building it out? Or where do you start at all? And from a cultural perspective, how do you process through the organization? Like there's salespeople involved in coming to you to posting that.
Setting up. I think in terms of always on approach, that's something we've had going through email for several years. It's something which is the natural result of a lead scoring model when you actually work out where different people are in terms of engagement and how close they are to buying your product, then it naturally makes sense to change their frequency, to change the messaging, and to put them into different nurture tracks. We found that on Facebook the same was happening. The guys who basically manage our paid media, and particularly Facebook and Instagram, they have their own funnels that would be set up. The key thing is that we basically work as a global full-service agency in Toronto for the different regions, and it's mostly US, Australia, Canada, Central Europe, and so forth. The key thing is that they don't necessarily know that that's going on, and the same with their brand managers. They might not see that that's happening. They see at the end of the month that they have a particular sales result, but they wouldn't see that this is because these things are in place, and that's why we're gradually moving the tide level up all the time. So from a change management perspective, I think it's mostly around communication of the change that you're making and continuing to highlight those successes, because I think as marketers, we all really like to create new things. We love the new shiny thing, and that's traditionally, again, how we were sort of, at least from my generation, raised, because 15 years ago when you went to, college, university, you didn't have digital marketing, email marketing courses talking about these sort of things. You have a brand campaign and you run this for a month, and then you change the message and you run that for 2 months, and that's one way you can definitely do it, but when you have a lot more data available, you can be smarter than that. So I think changing people's perceptions around how marketing can actually work is key to that, and a lot of that is just communicating the successes. Did that answer your question satisfactorily?
Thank you.
Just a sort of follow-up question about how you were talking about A/B testing. Is that 12-month phase an iterative phase? And is there multiple tests happening during that phase, or is one absolutely you're conducting the result at X, Y, and Z periods of time?
So
Steps.
yeah, I mean, it really depends on the situation and the organization. I mean, each test plan is different, but essentially, be around testing multiple components. So, I mean, the end goal is to have, improved performance in your email program. So, it comes down to creative subject line, different layouts, different areas, different product mixes. I mean, there's a number of different things that go into that. So, we design it in controlled fashion. So it's not that you kind of plan it out for the year. Well, we're going to go through this, and then we're going to test that, and then we're going to come back and back test that, and then we're taste this combination of those things, and the winner from that gets tested with that. And, so there's some logic to how how you go about doing it and how you build the testing plan. And again, it's different for every client, but the main point there is just to do it over time. So it's not a one-time test. I tested for a month and now I have an answer that I'm going to use forever. It becomes a part of how you run your email programs in perpetuity. So it's not even a 12-month testing plan and then we're done testing for the next 5 years. It's like, no, then we go into next year's one-year testing plan, and you're kind of doing it all the time throughout. And that's really where you're going to start to see, lift in performance, because you have a much more, it's just ingrained in the culture of the organization that you're always testing. You're not just sending it out and not trying something.
So what do you do when your A/B testing is showing very little difference? How are you, in my experience, that if you do A/B testing, I feel like the difference between engagement is 3% or something like that. And you're trying different things. So, how do you go back to the drawing board when you look at it in that case where you're thinking, well, why? It doesn't matter. Whatever crap I write down.
So I mean, I think, you know, you just have to keep testing. I mean, it's a fortunate reality, and I've been in the digital business for a long time, and you know, in the media space before email, and it was always, you know, like we were building banners and things like that, and you go, well, what should we test? I'm like, I don't know, make one blue, one yellow, test something. Like, if you know, if you don't have anything unique to say, or if your legal has constrained you that you can only say one thing ever, you know, well, test something, you know, test the, you know, put the picture on the left versus the right, like, do something to see. Oftentimes it would be immaterial, and we'd be like, well, we don't see any difference, so you don't make, so you just didn't learn anything, essentially, and you try it again, or you try a different variation until you start to see a difference. And I think, you know, if you're not seeing any lift in your subject lines, I mean, it might be something else. Maybe it's look at your segmentation. Maybe you have to look at who you're sending to and when. You know, or time of day. I mean, maybe other factors that are more important for your audience than subject line. And you might see a different list there. So there's usually a virtually infinite list of things to test. So I would encourage you not to be discouraged, and you're not alone. It happens all the time to everybody. But just keep trying. I mean, something will resonate, and something will create lift at some point in time if what you're doing today isn't helping.
I'll have a quick one before we go down. I think in that case you probably need to be more dramatic within brand guidelines, of course, because if you're seeing those minor changes, then really it's because the audience doesn't really care much, and overall that's not going to be where your time is best spent. If you do something like, let's say you completely change the layout of an email, and then it shows a difference, then you can dial in to find, all right, which portion of that drove a big difference. Because if you're changing one word in the subject line or changing the sending time by an hour, then you probably will just tease out maybe a minor difference statistically between the two. There's another concept as well in statistics, which is, I think, relevant here. It's like the local maximum versus the global maximum. And you can test a lot for local maximums by testing something which might make a 5% difference. You can repeatedly test it and optimize it. Or you can test another thing which actually in 2 tests might give you 20% lift. So it's impossible to know what those are necessarily, but if the change is more dramatic, then you'll definitely see a change in one direction or another. It might not always be the way that you like it. To take that to an extreme, if you were swearing in your subject line, you will see a change. Yeah, that's I think how you can approach it. Just make your changes larger, make them really obvious to the consumer, and they'll tell you pretty quickly whether they like it or not within brand guidelines and legal templates.
Like sending an email with tests in the subject line. That's a great way to get lots of opens.
Now that's going to be hard to follow.
Sure.
Just start quoting statistical references. Actually, this question pulled an example from my time before Klick and doing work at TD Bank, and it happened to be more website based, where we're doing multivariate testing and little things like colors and different components of an email. So break down your email, right? Take it, subject line is a key one and an easy one. Pre-headers. Test your pre-header. Test the combination of your subject line and pre-header. It's not always easy. My team does the configuration. It's not easy. The tools don't make it as simple and easy to do. But it's an option, right? And then components within the email, the image compared to the copy. Now we work in a really regulated environment in pharma, and it doesn't become as easy to test those types of things because every combination and variation has to get approved through the marketing, regulatory, and legal bodies, and we have a whole team on staff dedicated to supporting that and driving it. So in our case, we actually work with those teams internally to get their opinion on what we can and can't say. So because in pharma it has to be fair balance and medically sound, and so we actually get the experts helping us with some of that content and that information.
Okay, we probably have time for 2 more questions. Anyone? All right, I have 2 more questions now. So internally, when you look back at things that have worked, things that haven't worked, or things that you're currently working on, what type of tools are, you all said data. Data backs everything up, data pushes change. What types of tools are you relying on in order to gather that data to make those changes? Like Taina, you mentioned a survey that you do, that maybe Anna or Phil, you have something that you're using internally to get that data so you can push those changes.
So I myself had done some assessment, and I as a, there's all these personality tests and skill development, and I happen to do leadership development consulting outside of work as well. But one of the things is data doesn't equal numbers. This is a reminder. It's information in general, and so it could be, for example, mapping out what the end-to-end process is and identifying kind of areas of opportunity or gaps, and then honing in on that more, whether then you're interviewing people in the process around, the handoffs, for example, and, that was actually something that I did when I first joined Klick. Why are you handing off this 10 times, before it's passing? Can we bundle some of that work? And just those little questions that people forget, you get busy. How many of us are day-to-day just executing and doing and running, and don't always take that time to pause and stop? And so sometimes taking that time to plan, something we recently did as well, was kind of outline what business we're in. Business model canvas was a tool that we used to figure that out, and then that was the input to a gap assessment and kind of, figuring out the things that we want to be doing and the things that we shouldn't be doing. And that's where we started highlighting, we're skipping a step in the process, seedless testing, for example, in advance and getting sign off. And it sang out loud. It kind of sounds bad, but that's okay. It gives us an opportunity to fix that now and do that forward. So I think it's not just about the numbers, it's also about the other information that is available at your disposal.
I would say in terms of the way I would think about using different tools within a marketing tech stack would almost be a starting point as level one, and that's if you're using, let's say, MailChimp or something which doesn't necessarily have a huge amount of automation tools. And then when you get more budget or more time and resource, you can then move to, let's say, level two, which is segmentation. And then you'd be splitting your audiences based on, male and female, demographics, whatever might make sense, behavioral even. And level three is the machine learning one-to-one stuff. So that either takes a lot of in-house data science or a lot of money to pay for those tools. But I think if you analyse where your company is in terms of those three different steps, then you can work out where you'd like to get to. And some things can bridge the gap. There's one in particular that our company uses a lot. It's called Zapier. I don't know if you've heard of Zapier, but Zapier is basically a middleware that connects two different systems that don't necessarily talk to each other. So maybe you can't get an API feed into your ESP with purchase data or with leads that you got at a trade show or something like that, but pretty likely that Zapier's got connections for both Google Sheets and your ESP, and you can automatically push them in and send out welcome emails as well. There's a lot of hacks you can do like that to try and basically get around some of those budget questions when you don't actually have the money or the resource to get those really big ticket tools.
Great. We have 1 minute. So just closing thoughts from each of you.
Yeah.
1 minute to share.
Okay, my closing thought is really just around, I said in the beginning, you guys really should just take over the digital marketing world. I mean, there's so much skill and talent in the email space. I don't think you truly value what you have to offer to the digital mix. So within your organizations, go take your leadership position, go talk to your senior leadership, go tell them what you know about your audience. That information is so valuable, your skill set is so valuable. So that's my mission.
My default one for that would be work out, if you're not already in it, what you're passionate about, and then just chase that, because you'll be so much more motivated, you'll work harder than everyone else, you'll find all those things that other people didn't find by being in an industry and a position that you really, really care about. And then that leads to all those things like finding the insights with senior leadership, wanting to talk to other teams to show how you can help them. It all explodes from really loving what you do and being passionate about it.
For me, it's owning your own outcome. I've led teams, and one of the things I see is people wait for permission. Little secret, leaders don't always know the answers. We don't always know what's needed. If you see something, take action, either bubble it up, and again, I mentioned it depends on your organization. So some you have that jurisdiction and you can easily do it on your own. Others require approval from the most senior person in the organization. So if you think you need permission, go get it yourself and then drive that opportunity, because that's where you're going to see that change take place.
Awesome. So the takeaway is do it all yourself. Ask forgiveness, not permission. Be passionate about it. Thank you very much to the panel. This was fantastic.